Today's shiur begins 5 lines before the wide lines on Daf Chof Gimel, the last 5 narrow lines of the Gemara, or if you prefer, 24 lines from the top of the page. In effect, we're continuing with the topic that we discussed in our previous shiur, where we're analyzing what happens with a woman where 2 witnesses indicate that she has a married status and 2 witnesses indicate otherwise. We were dealing with a Mishnah on Daf Chof Beis Amud Aleph, which concluded with the statement V'im mishenises bo edim harei zu lo teitzei. So if you have Chof Beis available, by all means take a look at that Mishnah. And on the side of today's Gemara, here on Daf Chof Gimel, we have written, as far as the nosei, the topic heading on the side, Shtei Deos, 2 opinions, Al Makoi Mishpar Achron Shel Mishpar Daf Chof Beis Amud Aleph, Be'inyan Edim Shebo Achrei Shenosnu Lo Heter, Al Smach Pesh Osar Hu Pesh Hitir. In that Mishnah, we spoke about a woman who opened up her claim with a restrictive type remark and then concluded saying that she is not restricted anymore. In the Mishnah, reference was made to if Eidim were present, if witnesses could testify regarding that restrictive information, the woman would no longer be believed. But if she married and then the witnesses came, she doesn't have to leave the second husband. So what is that closing statement of the Mishnah referring to? Is it referring to the Eishes Ish Hoyisi opening part of the Mishnah? Or is it referring to the Nishbesi, where she says she had been taken captive? Let us now continue with our Gemara, hoping, of course, that you're familiar with our previous shiur, thereby saving time from having to, go over the entire sugya. So now we continue in the Gemara. V'im mishinises bo edim harei zu lo teitzei. If after she married a second husband, the witnesses came, so she doesn't have to leave the second husband. Rav Oshaya masni lo aresha. Rav Oshaya refers the closing statement of the Mishnah to the case of the woman who had said Eishes Ish Hoyisi. She said I had been a married woman, the grushani, but I was divorced. If based on that she went ahead and married a second man, and then witnesses came informing us of her having been married, so regarding that, Rav Oshaya says she doesn't have to leave the second husband. Rabbo Bar Ovin masni lo aseifa. He refers the closing phrase of the Mishnah to the Seifa, where the woman had said, I was taken captive, but remained untouched by the Gentile captors. We saw in the Mishnah that she can marry a second husband. However, what happens if after she married the second husband, witnesses came telling us that she had been taken captive? So, according to Rabbo Bar Ovin, the Mishnah is telling us she does not have to leave the second husband, even though now we do have witnesses telling us about her having been taken into captivity. Man de masni lo aresha kol shekain aseifa de b'shivuya hekilu. He who teaches this on the Resha, namely Rav Oshaya, the Kula of the Mishnah, which says that even though witnesses show up subsequently, she doesn't have to leave the second husband. Certainly that leniency will apply to the Seifa. So if you're going to teach it on the Resha, which dealt with a woman saying Eishes Isha Isi Grushani, you'll certainly apply it to the case of Nishbesi Avol Tahurani, and witnesses come later telling us that she'd been taken into captivity. She doesn't have to leave the second husband. And why is the Gemara so certain about this, that certainly the leniency will apply to the case of Nishbesi? So the Gemara reveals, there's a halachic, let's say, leniency in general to the topic of captivity. You see, the issue of a woman taken into captivity is simply a matter of chashash, suspicion that maybe she had been in intimacy with a Gentile, which would render her unfit to marry the kahuna, as we said in our previous shiur. But it's just a matter of chashash, of mere suspicion. It's not a matter of certainty, and therefore we can afford to be makil and allow her to stay with the second husband. Uman demasni lo asefa, the approach taken by Rabbi Bar Oven, who applied the closing phrase of the Mishnah to the shvuya case. Avol arei shalo, but he won't apply the leniency in the case of the reisha, where a woman had said, I was once married, but I'm now divorced. She marries a second husband, and then witnesses show up after she remarried, telling us that she had in fact been a married woman. So I'm not going, the reisha case, I'm not going to rely on her comment of grusha ani. Lema b'Rav Hamnuna komifligi. We have a machlokus right now between Rabbi Shaya and Rabbi Bar Oven. Can we say that their machlokus is one of whether or not to accept Rav Hamnuna's teaching? Rav Hamnuna's teaching was a woman that says to her husband, Geirash Tani, so she is believed. This reference, by the way, to Rav Hamnuna is a point that we saw in our previous shiur. You'll notice that Rav Hamnuna appears on Daf Chof Beis Omid Beis. You can see his Shlita appears about 8 lines up from the bottom, the second of the wide lines there, and we want to set up this machlokes between Rav Oshaya and Rabba surrounding his teaching, as the Gemara will do immediately. Man demasni lo aresha. Rav Oshaya, who taught the phrase of imishinises bo edim lo teitze, regarding the racial case of her claim that she had been married but she was divorced, he is slay the Rav Hamnuna. The fact that we're giving a lot of weight to her comment of grusha ani, I am a divorced woman, that's because he holds by Rav Hamnuna that a woman who says to her husband, you divorced me, she's believed. Uman demasni lo asefa. Rabbi Bar Oven, who taught the kula of the Mishnah, the leniency of the Mishnah, but only with regard to the shvuya claim and her remaining tahora, but would not have taught it regarding the claim she makes of grusha ani, less lay the Rav Hamnuna. So he would not hold from Rav Hamnuna that a woman who says grusha ani gerashtani, a woman who says to her husband, you divorced me, that she would be believed. Lo, this analysis is rejected. The kuli alma islu de Rav Hamnuna. Both Rabbi Bar Oven and Rav Oshaya accept Rav Hamnuna that a woman who says to her husband, you divorced me, she's believed. The hocha b'hocha mifliki, and the machlokes here between Rav Oshaya and Rabbi Bar Oven is as follows. The more sovar, the approach taken by Rabbi Bar Oven, who taught the kula of the Mishnah on the Seifa, ki itmar de Rav Hamnuna befonav. Rav Hamnuna's statement that a woman is believed, that's when she's speaking directly to her husband. In other words, unless she knew for sure, unless she was certain in her claim, she wouldn't have the gall and audacity to say to her husband, you divorce me, if that wasn't the absolute case. That's when it comes to befunav. So that when she says it to his face, she must be telling the absolute truth. Aval shalo befunav misa, but in our situation, where a woman's coming on her own telling us, I was married, but I have since been divorced, she would say I was divorced, even though that might not be the absolute truth. Therefore, if witnesses were to come to tell us that she had been a married woman, we will tell her to leave the second husband. Umor Savar, the approach taken by Rav Hoshaya, who applied it to the Reisha, holds Shelo b'fanav nami eino me'iza, even not in the presence of her husband. A woman would not have the nerve to say she was divorced if she was anything other than, in fact, divorced. So therefore, her statement of Grushani is given a lot of weight. V'im mishenises bo edim v'chulei. We're going over that same phrase from the Mishnah Chav Beis Amid Beis, and we're now going to give a new twist to it, as we alluded to in our previous year, that and when we were reading the Mishnah on Daf Chav Beis Amid Aleph, we indicated at the time we were merely translating it, but not giving it the full hesber, the full explanation, as the Gemara does now. Omar Avua D'Shmuel. Lo nises mamish. When the Mishnah says that imishabo edim nises, or excuse me, correction, the imish nises bo edim. The Mishnah on the superficial translation will be that if after she married the second husband, the witnesses came that she was originally that she was originally married, or originally that she had been taken captive. That word, imishenises, if after she married the witnesses came, Avur D'Shmuel tells us it doesn't mean she actually married someone else. Lo nises mamash elo kevon shitiru li nase. Once the court gave her permission to remarry, afal pi shelo nises, even though she didn't actually remarry, she is allowed to remarry. She doesn't lose the license, the heter that the court granted her because of her original comment, which was a pesha osar, pesha hitir comment. So once they give her permission to remarry, that's enough. Even if witnesses come later bearing that the original restrictive information, that wouldn't restrict her chance to remarry. The Gemara questions this, though. V'ha lo teitzei kotani. The language of the Mishnah was that she already had remarried in actuality, not just the receiving license, because the Mishnah says that if after she remarried, witnesses come, then we say lo teitzei. She doesn't have to leave the second husband, indicating that she actually remarried. The Gemara answers that's not how to understand things, though. Lo teitzei means mehetera harishon. She doesn't lose the original heter, the original permission that she was granted. Tonu Rabbanan. Omra nishbeisu torani v'yeshli edim shetorani. A woman says, I was taken captive, I remained untouched, and I have witnesses to that effect. Ein omrim, we don't say namtir nashi ovo edim, let's wait until those witnesses show up. Ela matirin oisa miyad. We give her permission to marry immediately. We immediately give her permission to remarry. Hitirua linose v'achar kach bo edim v'yomru. They gave her permission to remarry, and then the witnesses came and said, Lo yadanu, we don't know that she is tahora. Harezu lo teitzei. She doesn't leave. In other words, she got permission to remarry, Certainly if she remarried, she doesn't have to leave the second husband. Even though we have a situation where she claimed the witnesses could testify to back up her claim that she remained pure, and they say, we don't know. That doesn't affect her ability to be with her second husband. If witnesses come that say we saw her in intimacy with the captors, afilu gesh lo kama bonim teitse, even if she has a number of children from this Kohen that she remarried, she must leave him. Now we have a story. We have a long marking, a maisa, an incident. On the side of the Gemara, we introduce this section under the Nosei heading. Benos Mar Shmuel, the daughters of Shmuel, Shenilkachu B'Shevi, that were taken into captivity. Vehe Sigu Heter Likahuna Ayadei Tainas Pesha Osar. And we'll see in this story how they achieved a heter to marry even a Kohen based on the Pesha Osar, Pesha Hitir method of claiming. Hani Shvuyasa, the Asyon Lenaharda. Once upon a time, there were captive women that were brought to Naharda for the purpose, the captors wanted ransom money for their release. So they were brought to Naharda in the attempts of the captors to get money for their release. The father of Shmuel set up guards, people to watch the girls, to watch them, to make sure that there was no promiscuity taking place between them and the Gentile captors. Amar le Shmuel, the son of Avud Shmuel, says to his father, and up till now, when they were traveling from place to place under the control of their captors, who was watching them? In other words, they've already become defiled based on their having been taken into captivity. What's the point of setting up guards now? Omarle, so the father, Avud Shmuel, says to Shmuel, Elu bin Sochavion, if they were your daughters, Mihavis mezalzabu kulehai, would you have been so loose with regard to their care? Would you have taken things so lightly? In other words, if it were your daughters, you would have been interested in any form of guarding that could be imposed. Havoy kishkogosh yotz mifnei hasholet ve'ishtabion bimsei demar Shmuel ve'askinu la'arad Yisrael. The fact that Avud Shmuel spoke the way he did. This is something, by the way, we try to avoid by when saying something negative or describing a negative situation. You don't impose it or describe it on the person to whom you're speaking. But that's what he did. He said, if it were your daughters taken into captivity, so it slipped out, and as a result, that's actually what happened. And that's what the pasuk that's quoted here conveys that idea. Without providing a literal translation, but that's what it means, that the things that a person says, even by we'll call the slip of the tongue, the thing can come to be true. So that's what happened, and daughters of Shmuel, just like his father said, the Shmuel's daughters were taken into captivity, and they were brought to Israel. The captors brought them to Israel. Ukmon l'shavuyaynu me'avroi. The daughters of Shmuel seem to have been able to convince the captors who were to wait outside. In other words, just if you want to imagine, the captors had surrounded a building with these girls, and the building happened to be the base medrash. And the girls said, "Listen, can you wait outside?" The Aili lebei midrasha de Rabbi Chanina, and the girls, the daughters of Shmuel, went up into the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Chanina. Now, Rabbi Chanina didn't know what was going on outside. These girls walk into the Beis Medrash. Ha'amra nishbeis yutorani, va'amra nishbeis yutorani. Each girl says, announces, I've been taken captive, but nothing has happened to me. Sharinu. So he allowed them, said, you're kosher to marrying a Kohen. You're telling us you are the source of knowing that there might be a problem, namely that you've been taken captive by Gentiles, which would be a problem for a girl to marry eventually a Kohen. But at the same time, you're also telling us that nothing has happened to you. So just like we would believe you regarding your having been taken into captivity, Pesh Ozer, Pesh Hitir, we accept your word that nothing has happened to you. Soif Oil Asu Shavuyanu. And then eventually the captors went up into the Beis Medrash. And now the Rabbi Chanina becomes aware of their having been taken into captivity simply by the presence of the captors. With this information, I don't need to have heard from the girls that they were taken into captivity. This is very similar to what we learned in the Mishnah, that you had an initial Pesh Ozer Pesh Yitir claim, and then witnesses show up with the restrictive type information. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Benon Demoryaninun. Rabbi Chanina understood that these are daughters of a scholar. Igloi Milsa de Binsi Demor Shmuel Havin. It became revealed that they were the daughters of no less than Shmuel, the great Amora Shmuel. Amar le Rabbi Chanina, the Rav Shaman bar Abba. Rabbi Chanina turned to Rav Shaman, who was a Kohen. Pok itbil bekrovosecha. Go, without a literal translation of this phrase, what Rabbi Chanina is saying, go and marry one of them, one of these girls. Amar le Rabbi Chanina. So Rav Shaman says to Rabbi Chanina, Voika Eide b'bnei Sayam. Are there not witnesses abroad that could testify that they had been taken into captivity? So Rav Chanina says, Hashtomias lesnu, come on. Well, they're not over here. Those witnesses are not over here. Eidem betzad istan v'teaser. Just because they're witnesses out there in the north, that should be a reason for restricting them. The witnesses are not here. If you marry them, so you have a situation of getting married, and then the witnesses might show up later on, and we know that you could stay married to them. The Gemara asks, Taima delo asu edim. The reason that Rabbi Chanina is willing to be lenient here and allow Rav Shaman and suggest to Rav Shaman marry one of them is because those witnesses from abroad have not come. Ha asu edim. If the witnesses would come, mitzvah, this implies that only because they did not come, that they exist out there, but they didn't come to us to tell us about the girls having been taken into captivity, but had they come, the girls would be forbidden. And note, we have this from before. There are arrows you can use to navigate and find this from above, a quote from above. Is it not so that Avua de Shmuel said, Kevon shitiro linose, afalpi shalo nises? That once the girls get a heter to remarry, that's enough. Even if they didn't actually remarry. Once they get the heter, the fact that witnesses might show up later on has no bearing on their heter. So what is Rabbi Chanina implying by saying that, well, the witnesses haven't shown up? Indicating that if they would show up, even though the girls received the heter already, those witnesses could alter the situation. But according to Avua de Shmuel from before, once she receives a heter, the appearance of the witnesses would not alter the situation. Omar Ravashi, Eidei Tuma Itmar. The Eidim in question over here in this story with Rav Chanina and Rav Shaman, the witnesses that might come and show up and ruin the heter, those are witnesses that would testify about actual intimacy. Oh, witnesses that testify about actual intimacy. This we saw also in the Tanaic source above, that even after she would get married, and certainly after she received merely a heter to get married, she would be rendered forbidden to the second husband. We continue with the new Mishnah on Amud Beis. We turn to Amud Beis, the Mishnah. Before we read the Mishnah, we glance at the side where we have a topic heading, the Nosei, Hame'idah al atzmo v'al chaverta b'kesher l'shvios. We'll see a situation of a woman testifying about herself and about her friend in the context of women taken into captivity. The Mishnah, Shtei noshim shenishbu, 2 women taken into captivity, and Rashi adds there are witnesses that they had been taken into captivity. So we're not dealing with a straightforward case of peshos or peshihitir, but here we have that element, as we'll see shortly in the Mishnah, but there are also witnesses present that there exist witnesses that they had been taken into captivity. So 2 witnesses, 2 women, 2 shtei noshim shenishbu, zos omeres nishbesi utorani, v'zos omeres nishbesi utahorani, einon ne'emanas. Each woman says, I have been taken into captive, but I remained untouched by the captors. And of course, as we've seen already, this testimony is in the hope, or this comment is in the hope of her being allowed to marry a Kohen. So each woman says about herself, I was taken into captivity, but I remained untouched. The Mishnah says they're not believed. And why are they not believed? As we said, because it's not a pesha osar pesha hitir. As Rashi added, there are witnesses that they have been taken into captivity. So it's not as if the women are making problems for themselves, which would thereby give credence to their undoing of the problem. The problem is established, in this case the problem being taken into captivity, is established by witnesses. So for a woman simply to claim tahorani, they're not believed. Person isn't believed on himself to create a situation of leniency. In this case, the heter, the permission to marry a Kohen. Ubizman shehein me'idois zu ezu harei elu ne'emanos. However, if each woman testifies about her friend, they do have believability. Rashi points out, when it comes to matters of captivity, which is an issue of mere suspicion, unless, as we saw on Amud Aleph, a case of witnesses that say they saw the actual intimacy, the mere information that they have been taken into captivity creates suspicion, but it doesn't create a sense of certainty. It does create a restriction regarding the kahuna, but there are situations where the woman's claim of tahora is believed. And in this case, where she testifies about her friend, that her friend is tahora, even though there are witnesses that the friend was taken into captivity, her testimony concerning the friend has the status of an eid echad, and in this case, just like we saw in our previous discussion, we spoke about the previous shiur, we discussed a single witness that says mace, that the husband of a woman died. He has the believability as if he were 2 witnesses. In a similar vein, witnesses, a single witness that says regarding a captive woman that she is tahora is believed. Let us continue in the Gemara. Tanu Rabbanan ani tamea v'chaverosi torah. Now we should point out in this case, in this Tanaic source, you can see it's numbered all very clearly. There are 4 cases. And following this Tanaic source, you'll see diamonds, and the diamonds quote from various sections of this source, starting from 2 and continuing to sections 3 and 4, as the 3 diamonds indicate. So first we read a source, and the explanation will follow. Ani tamea v'chaverosi torah. It's a woman who says, I was defiled. And we're talking, of course, in the context of women that had been taken into captivity. She says, I have been defiled, but my friend remained untouched. Nemenes, she is believed. Ani tahora v'chaverosi tamea eino nemenes. A woman who says about herself, I am undefiled, my friend has been defiled, she's not believed. Ani v'chaverosi tamea. I and my friend have been defiled. Nemenes al atzma. She's believed regarding herself. V'eino nemenes al chaverta. But she's not believed regarding the information she says about her friend. Ani v'chaverosi tahora. I and my friend remain undefiled. Nemenes al chaverta v'eino nemenes al atzma. She is believed regarding her friend, but not regarding herself. As we go on in the Gemara, we have a long question. These are quotes from the Brisa in order to figure out is the Brisa and its consistency in terms of the circumstances behind this source, which we didn't really say. We indicated that we're dealing with the general topic of women taken into captivity, but what are the circumstances? Are there witnesses that they had been taken into captivity or not? So now we continue with the Gemara. The essence of this long question is that after we go through the analysis of the source, we're going to see, and if you want to take advantage of our marking system, you can see the wonders of markings. Just note the dashed underlining that you see that follows the diamonds. So that the first diamond, if you notice about 4 lines after the first diamond, you can see a dashed underline expression, the Ika Edim. That means there were witnesses that they had been taken into captivity. The second diamond, you just skim down directly under that 3 more lines, the Leko Edim. Third diamond, Leko meaning there are no witnesses. The third diamond, again, this dashed underline 3 lines later, the Ika Edim, there were witnesses. So we have a source. The opening of the source and the closing of the source indicate that there were witnesses. In the middle of the source, there were no witnesses. That's a Tanaic source, which is characterized by a certain level of inconsistency. Is that the case? That is our question. Should we keep things as is? Abaye will tell us, and you can see his name is underlined, he's Aleph. Yep, that's the way it is. And Rav Papa, though, he has a different approach. He sets up the entire source as speaking about there were witnesses. However, there's much more to it than that. And when you get to Rav Papa, you'll notice there's a series of triangles where they're numbered 1 through 4. What Rav Papa does is he explains the 4 cases in the original source with his unique explanation. So now that the structure has been laid out, we continue with the first diamond, Omar Mar, a quote from the source. We're calling this the Reisha. Technically speaking, it's case number 2. We'll call it the end. The Reisha means the beginning of the source. We'll call the end of the beginning. So it said there, Ani tahora v'chaverosi tamea eino ne'emenes. I remained untouched. My friend was defiled. She is not believed. Heichi domi. What are the circumstances? Ideleko edim, if there are no witnesses of their having been taken into captivity, al atzmo amai lo mehemno. Why is she not believed regarding herself? Nishbeisiu tahorani ko'omra. She's basically saying, I was taken into captivity, but I remained clean. That's a case of pesha osar, pesha hitir, and we know that we rely on that kind of claim. Why does the source say she's not believed? Ela pshita de'ika edim. Well, it's obvious then that there were witnesses about the captivity. Therefore, she is not giving us the pesha osar. And if you don't have a pesha osar, if you don't have her making the restrictive, if her restrictive comment is really unnecessary, so she can't take advantage, or we can't grant her permission based on her word of cleanness or of leniency. Therefore, regarding herself, she is not believed. When she says, I am Tahora, she's not believed. If we take a look at the Rashi on the first narrow line, Elapshita Dika Edim, Hilkoch Atzma Inu Nemenes L'Tara. Therefore, regarding herself, she's not believed to claim her untouched status. The Chaverto Nami, regarding her friend as well, Da'anan Amrinon Becheskas Tmea Kaimo. We say that once a woman is taken into captivity by Gentiles, we assume that they took advantage of them. Hahu lav mishum hemnusa dahahu. That is not because of our believing this woman's statement that her friend was defiled. Even without her testimony, the woman, her friend, is becheskas tuma. She's assumed to have been defiled by the Gentile captors. We continue. Eimo metziasa. We state the middle of the source. Ani v'chaverosi tamea. I and my friend have been defiled. Ne'menes al atzmo ve'eno ne'menes al chaver. She's believed regarding herself, but not regarding her friend. If it were so, like we assumed that the source is talking about witnesses that were aware of their captivity, amai lo mehemna. Why do you say that regarding her friend she is not believed? Elapshita daleko edim. It must be, in other words, for us to maintain the friend's purity, it must be that there's no information, there's no witnesses, there are no witnesses that report about their having been taken into captivity. Regarding herself, so the source says she's believed because of a concept known as shavya lenafsha chaticha disur. She made herself into something prohibited, and that's something that the halacha recognizes as, let's say, we call it reliable, or we'll call self-imposed restriction, is binding. But the mitzia, the middle section, is obviously talking about a case where there are no edim. Otherwise, the source wouldn't have said that she's not believed regarding her friend. Emo seifa. Ani v'chaverosi torah. I and my friend are undefiled. We have not been in intimacy with the captors. Ne'menes al chaverto v'eno ne'menes al atzmo. She is believed regarding her friend, that her friend is tahora. She's not believed with regard to herself. Well, we just had assumed that the source was talking about a case of no witnesses. So if there are no witnesses of their having been taken into captivity, if there are no witnesses, why is she not believed regarding herself when she says, I am tahora, I and my friend, so I am tahora? Is that not a case of pesha osar pesha hitir? If there are no witnesses, it's a clear case of pesha osar. She's making the problems for herself by telling us that they've been taken into captivity, and she's therefore believed when she says, I am still tahora. Why does the source then say she's not believed regarding herself? The reason she's not believed about herself is because there are witnesses. Wow, so what kind of source do we have here? The beginning and the end of the source is talking about one circumstance, that there were witnesses, and the middle of the source is speaking about a different circumstance. basically that's not desirable. When you have a Tanaic source, if there are any differences, it would spell it out. Otherwise, we usually assume consistency. Omar Abaye in Reisha v'Seifa Dika Edem Mitziasa Deleka Edem. Abaye says, in this case, that is the reality, that the Reisha and Seifa, there are witnesses about the captivity, and the middle, no witnesses. Rav Papa Omar Kula Deika Edem. Rav Papa is the second answer to make sense of the source above. The whole source is where there were witnesses that there had been captivity. Ve'ika aid echod deka apich. And there is a single witness that counters, apich means switches around, everything that the speaker in the source says. So, as we go on in the Gemara, you notice the triangles. These are Rav Papa's explanations for each one of the cases in the source above. So we'll introduce what she says, and then the double underline highlights the response of the single witness, which in effect will be the opposite of what she says. So as you go down the Gemara, you notice the triangles, where that introduces what she says, and then the single witness's response to what she says. And once again, Rav Papa is telling us that there's a backdrop over here, and in the backdrop there are witnesses that the girls, the women, had been taken into captivity. We continue now with the first triangle. Omro ani tamea v'chaverosi torah. We know that there are witnesses that the girls had been taken into captivity. She says, I have been defiled, my friend is undefiled. And bear in mind, what was the ruling in the source? The ruling in the source was ne'emenes. If you go back to the upper part of the page, in case 1, we saw ne'emenes. But we have to explain that. So in the meantime, she says about herself, I'm Tamea, my friend is Torah, v'yomer lo eid echad, at Torah, v'chavertoch Tamea. You are undefiled, but your friend was defiled. In the original ruling, we said she is believed. Ihi, regarding herself, remember her claim was, I am Tamea. Shavisu l'nafsha chaticha d'isura. It's called self-imposed restriction. She makes herself prohibited to the kahuna with her testimony that I have been defiled. Chaverta, her friend, mishtarya apuma dida. She is allowed. Mishtar means she's granted permission to marry a Kohen on her testimony. Meaning, the woman who when we mentioned before that in the case of captivity, the whole issue is a matter of suspicion. Was there immorality? Was there intimacy with the captors or not? But here you have the woman testifying that that her friend is tahora. That has the strength, if you will, of two witnesses. This is the concept of when we give believability to a single witness, as we do in the case of information within the context of shivuya, information of tahora. So we grant the woman greater strength than the one witness who says to the contrary. So the friend is, in this case where she says, my friend is tahora, the friend gets a clean bill of health, permission to marry kuna based on what the lady said. Next case, ani tahora v'chaverosi tamea. What did the source say originally in this case? She said the woman is not believed. What is she saying? I have not been defiled, my friend has been defiled. The Eid Echad switches it around and says, you have been defiled, your friend is not defiled. Ihi, regarding herself, Kevon De'ika Edim Lav Kol Kamino. Since there are witnesses about the initial captivity, so she's not believed. She's not believed to undefile her, to create a situation of non-defilement. Chaverta, the friend, Mishtaria Apuma Di'ed. The witness is saying that her friend is Tahora, so he has believability. The single witness to say that a woman was not defiled is believed. Ani v'chaverosi tamea. This is the third case. Woman says, I and my friend were defiled. And in the original source, the ruling had been she's believed regarding herself, but not regarding her friend. He says just the opposite. You and your friend are undefiled. Well, regarding herself, as the original source said, she's believed regarding herself. That's because she represents a self-imposed restriction, and we accept that. So she, regarding herself, as the original source said, is believed, even though the one witness said to the contrary. Chaverta Mishtaria Apuma De'ed. The friend, though she said she was Tamea, the one witness said Tahora. And as we've said already, that the one witness who claims Torah in the case of captivity, we are Mekil. Question. And here you'll notice we have a dashed underlining scheme that highlights the expression, the question of the Gemara, Hasu Lamal. You have that here, and you have it again a few lines from now. And on the side, we indicate under the, where you see the dashed underline under our same Ivneh heading, Hadgoshas Hashela Hasu Lamali. We're highlighting this question. Pa'amayim. We note this twice. The Lefi has Berush Rav Papa. According to Rav Papa's explanation of the source, Yacholnu Lilmoid Prote HaSeifa, the details in the Seifa cases Mikrim 3 and 4, Meharesha from cases 1 and 2. In other words, where you have a Tanaic source that reveals information that appears to be superfluous, why teach it? And that's what the Gemara's question is now. What we see and what we learned from case 3, we could have figured out from that which was stated before. Hence the Gemara asks, Hasu Lamali Hainu Resha. Resha in this case is a reference from cases 1 and 2. Whatever you see in case 3, namely, you see Shaviso Lenafsha Chaticha Disura. Well, that we saw in case, we saw that above. We saw that in case 1. And as far as in case 3, we see that the friend is, we believe the torah we accept the torah of the friend because of the single witness. That we saw in case 2. The same thing, Chaverta Mishtaya Puma Di'ed. So between cases 1 and 2, I see the concepts of Shavisa L'Nafsha Chaticha Disura, and I see Chaverta Mishtaya Puma Di'ed. What do I need case 3 for? Mahu de Tema. Regarding case 3, I might have thought Hani Travayu Tahoros Ninhu. The 2 women are actually Tahoros. Now, we saw in case 3 the speaker claiming that she and her friend are Tamea. But I would have thought that actually both are Tahoros. And by the way, that is what the single witness said in case 3. So I would have thought that in what we saw in case 3, but we should rule that both women are actually Tahoros. V'ai dekom rohachi, that she said, that the woman said, I and my friend are Tameos. In other words, regarding herself, she's making herself Tamea. It's not because in actuality she's Tameya. She's saying that because of the following psychology. Tomus nafshi implishtemid ka'avda. This is an expression, without translating the pasuk literally, it's not an uncommon situation where people want to make things bad for their friend. They want to mess up their friends, and they'll go so far as to, even if it's at their own expense, just to see their friends suffer. That's the concept of Tomus Nafshi and Plishtim. The background involves the famous judge of the people of Israel, Shimshon, sometimes known as Samson, who, at the end of his life, he prayed to God to bring retribution to the Philistines, and he was willing to have the Philistine temple crash down upon him, as long as that would also kill many of them at the same time. So he's willing to sacrifice himself just to see to it that the enemy got destroyed. That's the idea over here, where the woman who's saying Ani v'chaverti tameya, really they're both tahoros. This is again what I would have thought without the source and Rav Papa's teaching. I would have thought both women are actually tahoros, and all that was happening here is this woman was just trying to mess up her friend and willing to have herself messed up at the same time. The Gemara concludes Komash Malon that we don't say that, and rather, as we explained before, that regarding herself, fine, she made herself self-imposed restriction, she makes herself tamea, but the friend will be tahora based on the testimony of the single witness. Case 4. Ani v'chaverosi Torah. V'yamar lo eidechol ad v'chaverosech tamea. You and your friend have been defiled. Ihi kivandika edim lav kol kamina. Regarding herself and her claim that I and my friend, I am tahora, she's not believed regarding herself because there are witnesses about the original captivity. You don't have a case of pesha osar pesha itir over here. Chaverta mishtaria apuma dida. Her friend is given a clean bill of health, is permitted to marry a Kohen based on the woman's testimony. Her claim that her friend has remained undefiled is believed against the single witness claiming otherwise. The Gemara asks, Hasu lomali, hainu reisha de reisha. What do I need case 4? What do I need it for? In this case 4, the ruling is that she's not believed regarding herself. What did we see in case 1? We saw she's not in case 1. We saw the concept of shaviso lenafsha chaticha disura. So the information. Let me just retract just a moment. The Gemara's question of Hasulam. What do I need this case for? Hainu reisha de reisha. The information in case 4 that the friend is allowed based on the lady's testimony, lady 1 testifying about her friend, Mrs. 2, the friend being allowed to the kuna based on the lady's testimony, that information was seen in case 1 above. We saw there, it said, Chaverta Mishtaria Apuma Dida. What do I need case 4 to tell me that for? The Gemara answers, Mahu de Tema. I might have thought, had I had just case 1 and not case 4, I would have thought, Ki mehemna, when is a woman believed with regard to her friend? B'mokum de posla nafsha, where you make things bad for yourself, where you say on yourself, like we saw in case 1, I am Tameya, but my friend is Tahora. So, there we see a very honest type woman. Ava b'mokum de machshua nafsha, but where she's making it good for herself as well, maybe she's not believed regarding her friend. Komash malon, that's what I need the source to tell me, that with regard to her friend, she is believed. It's true, in case 4, regarding herself, She's not believed because we don't have a pesha oser pesha hitir situation. But with regard to her friend, she is believed because of the ne'emonos, the believability we grant to a single witness or a woman that says tahora in the case of issues of captivity. Now, as we go on in the Gemara, we note, first of all, we encounter now a new Mishnah, and on the side we have a nosei klali, a very general heading, and this is designed to introduce the ideas that will be discussed in the Gemara ad chav vav amud beis. This is a very, very long general topic. And the way we phrased it, malin liyuchsin legabi kuna. It's a topic that deals with establishment or establishing purity of lineage, of pedigree, in order to allow marriage into the kahuna. The realm of kahuna is a realm where there are more restrictions than the general population, and in order to establish purity of lineage for the kahuna, the Gemara has to dedicate itself to that topic. We say it's not something that applies to the general public, the standards that we find by the kahuna. We turn now to the Mishnah. V'chein shnei anoshim, ze omer koyanani v'ze omer koyanani. Two men, each one saying, I am a Kohen. Einon ne'emonim. They're not believed, and as a result, we're not going to give them truma. Truma is the tithe separated from one's produce and given to a Kohen. Only a Kohen is allowed to eat truma. So their claim, I'm a Kohen, that is not going to be believable insofar as our then giving them truma. And notice the similarity of the structure here to the previous Mishnah. That's why the Mishnah here opens up with v'chein. And similarly, when each one testifies about his friend, harei elu ne'emonim. In other words, in each case, what is happening here? In each case, they're saying, I and him, I and he, we are kohanim. Ani v'chaveri kohen. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein malin lekuna al pi eid echad. Rabbi Yehuda says that based on the testimony of a singular witness, we don't raise people to kahuna status. Rashi adds information that will be of importance later in the Gemara. Rashi says on the second line under the Gemara text, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, ein malin lekuna al pi eid echad. Even in situations where we don't have to suspect that each one is trying to help the other guy out, an expression you find in English is I'll rub your back if you rub my back. That's the case of gomlin. Even when you don't have that, and all the more so over here, where you do have to take that into consideration. Look, I'll testify for you if you testify for me. So Rav Yehuda says we're not ein malin lekuna al pi eid echad. We don't enable people to gain kohen status with the testimony of one witness. Amar Rabbi Ozer, Amosai bizman sheyesh orin. When is it that we do not trust or rely on the testimony of one witness? That's when there are orin, people that are challenging the purity of the individuals. Rashi says shekurnal of shame posel. People are referring to the individual as someone unfit, hence not a kohen. Rabbi Ozer continues. When there are no challengers, no one's casting aspersions or trying to ruin the individual. When everything is silent, then we allow kahuna status to be gained through the testimony of one. Rashi adds, this is provided that there is no issue of gomlin. We continue in the Mishnah. Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Askan, Malin Lakuna al pi eid echad. And he says we do enable people to assume kahuna status with the testimony of a singular witness. The question here, and we'll have to deal with this in the Gemara, what's the difference between Reb Shimon Gamliel and Reb Ozer? Both are saying that Malin Lakuna al pi eid echad. Now, before we go on in the Gemara, we have a topic heading and mivneh and structural note where a trapezoid or volcano shape appears, and on the side we indicate that these highlight mishnayos shofil mitchilas perek, mishnayos that have appeared since the beginning of this perek, sherubam be'inyan pesha osar, most of them deal with the pesha osar situation, a claim a person makes which introduces, opens up with restriction, and then an undoing of that as their statement continues. The Gemara will analyze, why does each one need to be taught? V'kan Rishimas HaMishnayos. And here we're going to present in our comment here on the side the list of Mishnahs. On Tesvav Amid Beis, we had the case of Moed Rabbi Yeshua, Sadazu Shel Avicha, where a fellow claimed, this field was your father's, but I bought it from him. Again, that's a case of Pesh Ozer, where the listener, in that case, knew nothing about the background to the field. Someone comes along and says, this field was your father's, but I bought it from him. On Yud Ches Amid Beis, Eidim Shomru Ksav Yodenu Hu Zeh, witnesses that said, yes, these are our signatures. However, we were minors, or we were under duress, or we were puzzled liedus. Chav Beis Amid Aleph, Eishes Ish Hayisi Ugrushani. Woman says, I was married, but I am now divorced. And likewise on that daf, Nishbeisi Utahorani, I was taken to captivity, but I am undefiled. On Chav Gimel Amid Beis, Shnei Noshim Shenishbu, we saw the case at the top of the Omid, two women taken into captivity, and their following claims. And right now, our mission of the V'chein Shnei Anoshim testifying about their kahuna. The Gemara, Kol Hani Lomali. All of these Mishnayos that teach the concept of Pesh Ozer, Pesh Hitir, what do I need them for? Srichi. I need them. The Tana Moed Rabbi Yeshua, had I had the Mishnah on Tes Vav Amid Beis, where Rabbi Yeshua described a man saying, this field was your father's, but I bought it from him. There he's believed, Mishum De'iko Droro de Mamona. There the person is sticking his neck out. Droro de Mamona means he's subjecting himself to a potential financial loss. By the fact that he opens up saying, this field was your father's, he's opening himself up for a possible financial loss. Losing the field. Avol, Eidim, witnesses that say, these are our signatures, but we were incompetent, we were under duress. The Leko Droro de Mamona, they're not subjecting themselves on a personal level to a financial loss. They weren't sticking their necks out. Amalo, maybe we shouldn't believe them. V'itana Eidim, had I taught just that case, where we believe them, Mishum Dila Alma. There it's because it's information that has bearing on others. Avol Ihu Dila Nafshe, but in the case where the person's testimony, his statement is for his own benefit, like we saw by Rabbi Yeshua's case, we continue at the top of Chof Daled. Eimolo, I might have thought not to believe him. His self-interest over there. Maybe I shouldn't believe him. V'yashmin and Hani Tarti. We continue at the top line of Chof Daled and Aleph. If I would have been taught those two cases, the case of the field being the father's and I bought it from him, and the case of the witnesses saying these were our signatures but we were under duress, and we say they're believed mishum dimamona, because they're issues of a financial nature. Aval eishes ish, but the source on Chof Beis Amud Aleph, where the woman says, I was a married woman, but I was divorced, the Isura, that's the realm of called religious law, namely non-financial areas, areas of ritual restriction. Maybe, Amolo, maybe there we shouldn't be so lax as to accept her information of leniency or permission of her saying that she's a grusha. Just in general, I'm sure many of you are aware that you have, in terms of the broad picture of halacha, there's the financial realm, and then there's the other realm, the religious realm, the ritual and spiritual realm, which falls under the broad heading of isuras, mamon versus isur. When it comes to financial matters, so there's more flexibility, if you will. There's more realm for compromise and for foregoing based on mutual acceptance. The same cannot be said with regard to religious law or ritual, spiritual law. A person cannot compromise on those matters. So, had I not been taught the believability in that case, I might have thought that she wouldn't be believed to say that she's a grusha. Nishbeisu torani lomali. What about the case of a woman saying, I was taken captive, but I was undefiled? What do I need that case for? Mishum the kaboy lemisni, because I needed to teach. It was necessary to teach. We saw the conclusion of the Mishnah, which said that if she got married and then witnesses came, so she doesn't have to leave, even though there are now witnesses that testify about her being taken into captivity, and it's no longer a pesha osar, pesha iter case. Nevertheless, if she got married, she doesn't have to leave. Well, law aseifa. This explanation of justifying why I need the case of nishbeisu torani is if you say that phrase of the end of the Mishnah of im mishinises is applicable to the case of shvuya, to the seifa. Elolaman de masni law aresha. But according to Rabbi Shaia's approach, that took that phrase, the closing phrase of the Mishnah, and applied it to the Resha, where the woman said, Eishas ishani ugrushani, Eishas yisi ugrushani, my ika lemeimar. There's still room for asking the question of what need was there for teaching the case of nishbeisu torani. The Gemara answers, Mishum de kaboy lemisni shtei noshim shenishbu. Let's say the structure of the Mishnah is such that the Mishnah Chof Beis Amud Aleph introduced a case of captivity, all as a lead up to the Mishnah Chof Gimel Amud Beis, which also dealt with a case of captivity, of women having been taken into captivity by Gentile captors. Well, okay, so I see that I had the Mishnah Chof Beis as a lead-up, as an introduction to the Mishnah on Chof Gimel Amud Beis. That's a legitimate answer. However, Ushtei Noshim Shenishbu Lamali, what about that? What do I need that for? The Mishnah on Chof Gimel Amud Beis, the two women taken into captivity. Each one saying that they are tahoros, etc., as the Mishnah reported. Mahu detemo nechush legoimlin. In that Mishnah, we saw that if each woman testified about her friend, they are believed. So I might have thought that we shouldn't believe them because what's going on here is simply an attempt to each one is doing a favor for the other one. That's goimlin, but that it's not reliable information. Komash Malon. So by teaching the Mishnah on Chaf Gimel Amud Beis, where each one was testifying about her friend, we accept it, and we're not choshesh. It's just some type of scheme to help each other out. V'chein shnei anoshim lomali. What about the Mishnah at the bottom of Chaf Gimel Amud Beis? What do I need that for? Mishum de kaboy lemisni plukto derbiuda v'rabonan. I'm teaching the case of the two men, each one saying the other is a Kohen. We said in the Mishnah they're believed, because I wanted to introduce additional opinions on that matter, like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbonon, the other opinions in the Mishnah, where the Tanakama says he is believed. Rabbi Yehuda says we don't rely on a singular witness. So in order to introduce the dissenting opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, it was necessary to teach the beginning of that Mishnah.